Test, test. All right. Test, test. And you're going to kill the mics in the room. From Robert French Levens. Holy and beautiful the custom which brings us together. I picked that because we're still together. In the presence of the Most High, to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones in absence, to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened and to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of ages, the cathedral music of history. 3 unseen guests attend, faith, hope, and love. Let all our hearts prepare them place. Let's go ahead and sing this opening hymn, wherever you are in the world. Stand if you want. So welcome to the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. Wherever you are, we're glad you're here. My name is Nathan. I'm your associate minister. Reverend Joel Miller is on his way to his next place. He is still available if we need him for anything. And Reverend Eric Poza is on his way here. He'll be here August 1st. We have volunteer Mike Patton. He's way up in the sound booth. Glad he's with us. Kathy Smith is our Director of Family Ministry. She is monitoring actually, if you want to say hi to her right now, she's on the YouTube feed. You can say hi. And our music program director, Leah Hartman, and our choral director, Trey Davis, are both away, but made the music for this Sunday. First of all, if you want us to place a stone, 504-334-8034. 504-334-8034. And we're about to do a roots class. So if you're interested, email membership@unitarianchurchbr.com or go on the website. We're going to announce those dates very, very soon. A few things you should know about this service. I had a lot of really great ideas for it. Some of the audio did not turn out as well because the ideas were more ideas than they were practical. So we're going to sort of supplement audio where need be. And in a couple of minutes, we're going to hear the lesson. We recorded that one over Zoom, so enjoy that and be glad I am glad we are not on that platform doing worship every Sunday. So now we also have, we're glad you're with us. We're glad you're here. We have a special announcement from Vicki Smith. She's the chair of the Senior Minister Search Committee.
Hello, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Vicki Smith, one of the members of the search committee of our next senior minister. Your search committee has been hard at work conducting the survey as well as holding the cottage and focus group meetings, and we really have appreciated your participation and thoughtful feedback, not to mention the opportunity to see a lot of you, even if not in person. We are tasked with compiling the information submitted by members so that we can help the ministerial candidates know who we are as a congregation and what we want for our future. In this way, our next minister will be better able to discern if they are a fit for our congregation. So your participation is key in giving them a comprehensive snapshot of our beloved community. We are wrapping up the results of these meetings and wanted to reach out one final time To those of you who may not have yet been able to participate, please take a few minutes to email us at ucbrsearchcommittee@gmail.com. Check your email this week for a list of the questions or email us, and we are happy to send them to you. The deadline is July 10th, so don't delay. We want everyone to be heard. Our next task will be a workshop hosted by the UUA called Beyond Categorical Thinking. We strongly encourage all members to attend, and since it will be from the comfort of your home, you can be sure good snacks will be had by all. This workshop will walk us through identifying what our assumptions are about our church. Candidate ministers pay attention to the level of participation as it signals our commitment to full equality and ongoing learning. We hope to have the date finalized soon. Thank you again for supporting us in accomplishing our goal of finding the best candidate for our next settled minister. After hearing much of the input so far, I'm just as sure as ever that we are indeed a beloved community. Thanks again, everyone. Stay safe, and we will update you soon.
Today's lesson is The Beautiful Tiger. It's by the Reverend Christopher Boyce. He's a minister in, Kathy, where is he a minister?
Tennessee Valley UU Church in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Been there a long time. This is his story, and bear with us on this. There's some metaphors that we think work some ways, some don't. We're kind of doing an overlay of the Zoom thing as part of the metaphor, so take it as far as you want, but as soon as it is broken or doesn't work, toss it out. So anyway, there once was a beautiful tiger. Pretty good, right? One day, this tiger, she was captured by a mean old man. Kathy, will you be a mean old man, please?
Grr.
That's a mean old man hat. We have at least one church member who wears a hat like that. We're not talking about you.
Mm-hmm.
Regular old hat. The man kept this tiger in the cage. It was in the jungle, not far away from his house. Every day he would bring a bowl of water. Pretty good. This is my bowl of water. And the tiger would look in that bowl of water and say, "Boy, I sure am a beautiful tiger."
And the man would say, "You are not a beautiful tiger. You are a ugly and sad tiger."
And sadly, the tiger would believe the man.
Why did the tiger believe the man? That makes no sense.
Look, this is what the story says. We got to do what the story says. Wait, this is what
Okay.
it says. We got to do what the story says. So anyway, one day the tiger is lying in the cage, and he says, do we skip the puny part? Are we doing beautiful and powerful, or all one?
You're doing beautiful and powerful, and this is
Right.
the part where you're beautiful and powerful.
Oh, so I also think I'm a powerful tiger. Man, do you hear me say I'm a powerful tiger?
You are so not a powerful tiger. You are a puny and weak tiger.
Sadly, I, the powerful tiger, believe that I am puny and weak.
That still makes no sense.
No, it's true. I think I'm puny and weak because you're the mean old man, and you told me. Anyway, one day you were not around. Go away. All right, good. One day the man was not around, and a lion walked by the cage. Wait, I don't want to scare people. A real scary, true-to-life lion walked by the cage. And the lion saw the tiger and said,
"What a beautiful and strong tiger you are. You are truly lovely and strong as might can be.
Do not make fun of me, paper lion. I am neither beautiful nor powerful."
I am not making fun of you. I would not say it if it were not true. You are clearly the most beautiful and powerful tiger I've ever seen. I am only surprised to see you lying here. You are clearly strong enough to break out of that cage.
You really think I could get out of this cage? Look at me. I'm a puny, not beautiful tiger.
I think you could get out of there really easily.
Tiger was not so sure at first. She tried so many times. She'd been told so many times that she was weak and pitiful. Suddenly, Suddenly, she could feel her energy and strength moving through her body. She began to pace back and forth. And then, almost without thought, and this is the part where this is kind of a Zoom metaphor, kind of not, so take it as far as you want, kind of not. But almost without thought, she leapt against the cage door.
Apparently, it burst open.
It did. It burst open and she left. The cage did not even have a lock. It was just shut the whole time with no lock. And I was too beaten down to figure out how to get out.
And the lion looked at her with soft brown eyes and said, those kinds of traps don't...
Brown paper eyes.
Soft brown paper eyes.
Carry on.
Surrounded by yellow paper face. And he said, those kinds of traps don't need locks, for it is the lies we believe that keep us in our cages, and it is the truth that sets us free.
Today for stones, we are going to place a stone for a death. Brad Belk, he grew up in this church. His mother was Margie Belk, one of the pillars of this church. He died of cancer on Tuesday, so we're placing a stone for him. This is the second member of Margie's family, children that died, him and Jan. Also, we found out that Vicky Berry broke her ankle, and we're thinking of her as a quick recovery. Today we place stones for Floyd Pryor, Rachel Arthur, for Gwen, for Henry Tillman, for all those victims of violence, especially children, and a stone for peace. Would you say with me? With hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my Sadness Corner. My name is Nathan. I'm one of the ministers at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. This is a corner where I've done just about all of my Zoom calls for the past 17 weeks, maybe more. I have a note, but past a lot of weeks. This is my old sewing table. Right here, sewing machine. I use it to make my Mardi Gras costumes. When my daughter was born, I pushed the sewing machine to the side and converted this to a changing table. Here's some of her diapers. When we had our surprise, but it really shouldn't have been that much of a surprise because someone in charge should have known about this and planned for it, shut down, I pushed the diapers aside and converted this to my work desk. See, I live in a 2-bedroom house with 4 people, 2 adults, a baby, and a toddler. And both of us are working from home, so it doesn't leave a lot of space to do work. But also doesn't leave a lot of space to set up a computer that has adequate lighting and an appropriate ministerial-looking background. Most of my colleagues have these great bookshelves in the background. Mine is in a hallway, can't set up there. Or they have a nice altar or a section of the house that can show off something reflective or meditative. But with little kids and the weird placement of windows, the windows right there, this is it. That's all I got. People suggest that I hang art on the wall. It won't work for two reasons. One, the proportions are off. Like, I'm literally right there. And two, I'm still living in a state of denial. Hanging up art here admits that I've given up on getting out, or given into the pandemic, and I just can't bring myself to do that. And because every Sunday I'm trying to find some way to make this sadness corner a little less sad. And if we're actually stuck with this way that we have to do worship, a way, by the way, that I cannot stand, I miss being in person. I miss being in a gathered congregation. I miss seeing people and not having I miss seeing you and not having my first thought be how scared I am of you, or that I might hurt you with my actual breath. And so this Sunday, I thought it might be good to do a service with another stupid title. So I'm sharing this service. So it's not just going to go to us here in Baton Rouge. I'm doing this exchange for a service with one of the preachers that I love the most in this religion. But so some of the people who see this will not be used to this gimmick. And the people in Baton Rouge are going to be a little too used to this. But I love naming my services something stupid. And you all here have been very generous with putting up with that. But because I felt, as I'm guessing you felt, completely trapped by this whole pandemic, if not concretely trapped in your house, metaphorically trapped by the uncertainty and the fear and the way that the days are tending to blur into weeks and months. So this Sunday, the whole theme is simply, let me out. I really wanted this to be a dumb service concept, one where we could just joke about being trapped inside, but there's no one group or person to fight against, because the thing that is keeping me inside is the warning from epidemiologists and the reality of a pandemic. But I mean, I thought it would be fun to lament about my struggles with reality, a struggle that not all of us are winning right now. And the more I thought about Let Me Out and this service, the more serious it actually became. The Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections created a panel in April in response to the coronavirus outbreak to review cases of prisoners who could be released, at least into house arrest. They were allowed to release up to 1,100 of the state's 32,000 prisoners. I know that some people might be uncomfortable about this idea, but remember that our prisons, while there are violent criminals and people who have committed heinous crimes, many of those incarcerated are in on nonviolent drug crimes. usually disproportionately enforced on black or brown communities. And remember that the coronavirus is worst in closed, inside spaces with people sharing space. And remember that not all crimes are capital crimes. Most are not. And that means that some of these 32,000 people will die for non-capital crimes because no one demanded that they be let out. So anyway, this panel was created to release up to 1,100 prisoners. As of the end of June, this commission released 63 people. That is 0.2% of the prison population. And so this idea of let me out brings a whole new meaning when you realize that. And so I thought maybe we should turn to the Bible and see what it says about prisoners, especially prisoners who are held at disproportionately biased levels with proportionate enforcement on those that American society intentionally put at the bottom of the pile. Those that will be condemned to death, not because of their crime, but because of systemic indifference towards their plight and their suffering. Let's see what Isaiah has to say about not just the prisoner, but all those who have been robbed of their due justice.
The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. God has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to release the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's. This still doesn't feel right. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. God has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to release the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for those who mourn in Zion, to give them a garland instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a faint spirit. They will be called the oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord to display God's glory. They shall build up the ancient ruins. They shall raise up former devastations. They shall repair the ruined cities, the many devastations of many generations.
This July marks 4 years since the killing of Alton Sterling by a Baton Rouge police officer. The video of the killing that took more than a year, almost a year to release, clearly shows an officer leaping on Mr. Sterling and shouting with more profanity than I will ever use in a service. And the direct quote is, "I'm going to kill you." He killed him. One of the things many white people miss about tragedies like this, Philando Castile, for example, 2 days after Alton Sterling was killed, and about George Floyd 4 years after Mr. Castile was killed, is that it isn't just about the incident. It's about a series of injustices, police overreactions, reminders of who has a thumb on the scales of justice. Mr. Sterling was killed July 5th, 2016. I don't have the time today or the emotional capital to also recount the fact that the police donned riot gear, acted as if they were riots, were ordered to do that, even when there were no riots, arrested hundreds of peaceful protesters in a show of force so grotesque it later cost the city of Baton Rouge $100,000 in a settlement with some of the unlawfully arrested. No, I don't have time to talk about the riot gear, the intentional flying of military helicopters over the city, re-traumatizing a community that vividly remembers those helicopters flying during Hurricane Katrina, rescuing people from New Orleans and bringing them to Baton Rouge as part of the federal government's failed response to that storm. Instead, I want to pay attention to the patterns after. Now, I'm not in Minnesota, so I don't know those patterns. I do have colleagues there. I know that there was no justice for the Castile family. I know that there have been protests for years after that, probably before that too, and they have been met by assertive police and indifferent public officials. So George Floyd's killing wasn't an isolated incident for that community. Here, the federal judge waited almost 10 months. The federal government waited almost 10 months to release the decision that there would be no charges in Mr. Sterling's killing. For months, there were rumors and hints of when a release would happen, but there was never a clear timeline. Instead, Baton Rouge was left dreading and waiting. The following May, the Department of Justice announced no charges. Right after they announced no charges, I still remember the weekend, we were having a workshop at the church. The police station is about 2 blocks away from the church. And I saw SWAT vehicles start driving by. And I heard the military helicopters flying overhead again. So later I looked in the newspaper to find out what kind of protest would elicit such a militarized response. The protest was 12 black men in leather jackets marching across the street towards the police station. That was it. The re-traumatization of the neighborhoods around the police station for 12 men who posed no threat that I could see. Then there was a new mayor, a new police chief. They fired the man who shot and killed Mr. Sterling. His firing was held up for years because a fired officer can appeal his firing to a civil service board made up of 5 members. One of those 5 is put there by the police union. The one put there, the one who serves on behalf of the police union, had his excessive violence firing overturned by the same civil service board. The union rewarded his victory by naming him to that board. The following April, our Louisiana's Attorney General declared there would be no state charges filed against the officer who killed Mr. Sterling. He waited until Good Friday to make the announcement. I presume, hoping people would be too distracted with Easter for a cohesive protest response. So it is not just about the incident. The injustice is not just the killing. It is the repeated attempts to prevent justice. Imagine if every time a teacher abused a child, the teachers' union prevented that teacher from being fired. And imagine every time a teacher abused a child, the courts refused to find that teacher guilty. The very first thing they did on the spot where Mr. Sterling was killed was to paint a large mural of him. The Baton Rouge black community responded to injustice with art. The vigil, the day after his killing, it was in July, it was hot, just blisteringly hot. There were thousands of people gathered around the store where he was killed. And they were angry, justifiably. And there was a man painting Mr. Sterling's face on the wall. And a brass band showed up a few hours later. Another thing about this whole let me out thing is that it doesn't matter how bad the injustice is or how tough the circumstance or how stacked against you the deck may seem. The human spirit, the love of God, the divine spark will always shine through. There's a neighborhood here in Baton Rouge. It's called Old South. Some people call it the Bottoms. It's where many of the freed people settled after the Second American Revolution in the 1860s. It was a beacon of black commerce for many generations. The Baton Rouge bus boycotts originated there. The Baton Rouge bus boycotts were studied by Dr. King and were a model for the Montgomery boycotts. There was a black commerce section with theaters and hotels and stores. When the United States built the interstate, they put it right through the middle of Old South. They did this to black communities in New Orleans, too. I haven't studied it in the rest of the country, but I'm sure it's not just these two cities. This is one of the many institutional things that our local and federal government did to plunge this community back into poverty. Right now, Old South, as is true of much of the black parts of Baton Rouge, is not given the same access to healthy foods, good jobs, economic development, adequate infrastructure. And even still, the spirit of love and joy and art cannot be crushed. There's art that surrounds the neighborhood everywhere. There's a museum of public art. There's world-class graffiti artists. Some of the homes are covered, the entire house is covered in graffiti, and not sort of willy-nilly graffiti. World-class graffiti artists come to Baton Rouge to paint this art. I was in Paris visiting some family a few years ago, and I saw on a street corner the same painting that was in Baton Rouge by the same artist. Now, this art is not a substitution for justice, but it's an expression of how the divine spark of humanity cannot be kept in. It must be let out.
Or a lottery ticket in a black woman's purse by Angelique Palmer. God or a lottery ticket in a black woman's purse. Trying to find faith in a world that is slowly killing me and blaming me for why they can't do it right. Or why survival might be the only thing in the way of enjoying life. Well, the privileges I own are many, but the luxury of using them correctly belongs to someone else. Or some for the little children. Yeah, that's it. Or explaining to your body that cigarettes and alcohol may have primed it for toxicity, but it's the paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth, and constant trying the elasticity of your stresses that's really boiled you into a bull stew. One that everyone you know recognizes as heritage or curse. Or dodging the landlord, ducking my debtors, and flirting with the bill collectors created in me a matching set of fissures and fault lines that saying boo might irreparably break. Or how do you pray when you keep failing every religion that has failed you? Or when the lottery would really solve a lot of these problems, so buying my lottery ticket is a sort of worship. Look at how every few days I ask something invisible to do something impossible. And the bit of hope that opens in my heart creates a dream, one where I will not be crushed by the sunrise and somehow find a joy that will fix me. Or faith is the only thing keeping me alive. When the world is trying to kill me, asking me if it's doing it right.
Because the audio has not been, well, we're still trying to figure this out. I did want to announce, because I'm not sure everyone heard, Brad Belk, a child who grew up in this church, he was in his 60s. He died. And also, I wanted to read you a piece of that poetry that Leslie read, because I don't want you to miss it. I wanted you to see the art. When I asked her to do it, I didn't count on cars driving by, so that's on me. But an excerpt of the poetry, it's called God or a Lottery Ticket in a Black Woman's Purse by Angelique Palmer. Trying to find faith, God or a lottery ticket in a black woman's purse. Trying to find faith in a world that is slowly killing me and blaming me for why they can't do it right. Or why survival might be the only thing in the way of enjoying life. And she continues, or dodging the landlord, ducking my debtors, and flirting with bill collectors created in me. a matching set of fissures and fault lines that saying boo might irreparably break? Or how do you pray when you keep failing every religion that has failed you? Or winning the lottery would really solve a lot of these problems. So buying my lottery ticket is a sort of worship. Look at how every few days I ask something invisible to do something impossible. And the bit of hope that opens my heart creates a dream, one where I will not be crushed by the sunrise and somehow find a joy that will fix me. Or faith is the only thing keeping me alive when the world is trying to kill me and asking me if it's doing it right. This church is still trying to practice generosity out in the world and amongst its members. So if you have made a pledge, please continue to pay on your pledge. If you are not finding a weekly ritual to supplement the experience of the offering, please try to find that. If you would like to give to this church, you can mail a check to the building. That's the least advisable right now. We can still get it, but it's just a little complicated. You could text us 833. If you text 833-796-0353 and you text the word assist, that will send you to a place that you can just give right online, just like that. 833-796-0353. The other thing in the list of things that I kind of neglected today, the other person who is monitoring this service and your text stone requests is Allison Hall. She is running so much that goes on in this church right now. Just want to name, and Jennifer is our bookkeeper, and she gets your checks. So I just wanted to list all the staff. I'll ask you to give very generously as this morning's offering is now given and received. have this habit of listening to other Unitarian Universalist services. I've been doing it for a long time, but especially since the lockdown. I like to hear what other churches are doing and to steal some of their best ideas. In doing so, I came across a congregation who adapted the words of a song, and it stood out to me. I'm picking on this church only because it's an example, and most recent example I've seen. I thought about naming the church, but it's not about this one incident. It's about this tendency over and over and over to do this. And so I'm picking on this one church. They had Wade in the Water as one of their hymns, and the music director changed the words to part of it. Now, I know that Unitarians love changing words, and I'm perfectly fine with adapting hymns to find a more authentic theology that furthers justice and progress rather than perpetuates oppressive worldviews. But in this particular case, they changed the words to Wade in the Water from God's gonna trouble the waters to we're gonna trouble the waters. The hymn was changed from a cry from the enslaved, those oppressed for liberation, to be let out, to know that even though they are walking into uncertainty, that God is the liberation, that they will be free if they just wade into the water. And that was a literal thing. That was actually a lesson on how to avoid being tracked by dogs. But to change God to us puts us at the center and gives us way too much power. It also lumps the enslaver and the enslaved into the same category. The enslavers did not trouble the waters. Maybe the God that moved in all of us, the God that pulls us towards justice, might have been the instigator for the war that moved in all of us, even the enslavers. The spiritual practice of let me out is a tricky one. If we are in charge of everything, then we can end injustice right here by ourselves. We can fix everything. We just need enough education, enough practice, done. It's a kind of liberal version of the prosperity gospel. That is to say, the more you believe, the more you get. And the inverse of the prosperity gospel, which is dangerous. So in the traditional version of the prosperity gospel is if you give enough to the church and you believe strongly enough, you will not get sick and you will not die. And if you need God to be proven by you not dying, then God will fail every person. The liberal version of the prosperity gospel is if there is injustice, we must fix it. And so the inverse of that is if injustice still exists, we have failed. I understand God as that pull towards love and justice. And I see God working right now. I always look for fissures to find it. Sort of when things are out of sync. A while ago, I did this metaphor of Mardi Gras where you sort of bent a paperclip back and forth, and every time you won one extreme, it would bend one way and another extreme would bend the other, until eventually it snapped in half because just the fissure point was too great. And I said, that's where real change happens. Well, I guess I'm saying now, that's where real change happens. And so right now I see one of those kind of extremes going back and forth. This summer, the state of Mississippi, the blackest state in the country, has officially finally agreed to remove Confederate foolishness from their state flag. They did this the same week that our president retweeted videos of a white man in a golf cart shouting the words white power. And while we did this in that the people of Mississippi got their national wave of racial justice and did it, and while the protests, which have always been going on since the first kidnapped people were brought to this country, and have always been going on since the first wave of conquest came to America, and specifically to this land's original inhabitants, there is something about it right now that makes it different than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I see God in right now in the ways that I haven't seen recently in the past. What I mean by that is there are always protests and always people working for justice. But every now and again, it accumulates into this wave of justice, and we're in that wave right now, and that's where change happens. And I see God in that. So it isn't just that we troubled the waters, something troubled the waters, and I prefer to call it God. And so this is the paradox of let me out. The tools we need as a religious people is to both know when we need to be let out and when being let out will make things worse. And to know that no matter what, we are held in God's hands, or if that term doesn't work for you, we are held in love and justice. And there's nothing that makes you unworthy of love. So here's what I mean. I want to get out. I don't want to be in this sadness corner anymore. I want to go back to a life where I can be with people, touch people, go shopping and worship, and not worry about if my breath is going to literally kill another person. And yet I am not in control of the virus. There are some things I can do to make it better. I need to do those. But I also need to have a theology robust enough to make space for the idea that things aren't just in my hands, but larger hands. That thing that unites us all, that pulls us towards love and justice, we're in those hands. And we must be discerning enough to know when just waiting is enough for us to bring about the kingdom of heaven. We must right now also demand the prisoners go free to save their lives and ours. And we must know that no matter how bad things get, no matter how tough things are, that the beauty and art and God and love and justice will always shine through. So while we are stuck at home, do what you can to take care of yourself. Don't worry about troubling the waters yourself, although make some waves if you can. They will be troubled plenty on their own. Make space in your hearts for the people who need those troubled waters or are scared by those troubled waters. Make space in your heart for all who have been lied to, so that they can know that they are beautiful and powerful. Make space in your hearts for people who only find hope in a lottery ticket. Make space in your heart for all those who feel trapped right now, or hurt, or addicted, or depressed, or feel like the world is changing out from underneath them. Make room in your hearts for them. And be open to the fact that a more just world is coming, and we can be a part of it. Amen.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the white sky. Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work towards a planet transformed by our care.
This benediction is one I turn to a lot when things are uncertain. It's by the Reverend Wayne Arneson. If you're reading along in your hymnal, it's 698. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in peace. Go in love. Amen.